Robot Overlordz. Welcome to another episode of Robot Overlordz, episode number 214. On the show we take a look at how society is changing, everything from pop culture reviews to political commentary, technology trends to social norms, all in about 30 minutes, or less, every Tuesday and Thursday.
Greetings, cyborgs, robots, and natural humans. I'm Mike Johnston.
And I'm Matt Bolton. And tonight we have one of our favorite guests, Mark Davis, who's been on several times before. All of a sudden, he's now an internet celebrity, but I just want to put out there that we had him on as a guest first. So, Mark, welcome back, and why don't you tell us a little bit about how you've become now an internet celebrity?
All right. Well, first off, thanks, Mike and Matt. It's good to be back. It's been a while, and it's obviously a pleasure to be on Robot Overlordz. So the last week and a half has been a roller coaster for me. What has happened is one of my YouTube videos from about 2.5 years ago has gone viral. Not only the YouTube video, but the content within the video has gone viral. And what this is I amassed a collection of Kmart in-store audio tapes. These are tapes that were played over the PA speakers while people shopped between 1989 and around 1993. So these were monthly tapes that shoppers would listen to, and there's advertising. And when I worked at Kmart as my first job, I just felt like keeping these tapes. And so I did a video on them on YouTube, which had traction. I've had a lot of people ask me to digitize and preserve these tapes. So I did preserve them. And then I upload them to the Internet Archive, and it's just completely blown up. And I've got a lot of news sources, online newspapers, online places such as Boing Boing, Vice, Daily Dot, Dig, those sort of things, as well as YouTube. Just tons of people commenting, asking questions. It's actually been a little bit overwhelming, to be honest with you, because it's hard to keep up with, but I also have not opted to turn off notifications. I kind of am seeing all this stuff coming in as it's happening, and it's still pretty busy tonight. Are
you surprised that, because it's been up for 2.5 years, like you said, are you surprised that all of a sudden, something that you've had up online for 2.5 years has just all of a sudden exploded?
Yeah, it's kind of strange, because I think in the back of my mind, I've always wanted to have some contribution to the Internet. And I think I've finally done that, and it's kind of like a life accomplishment. And it just kind of fell on my lap. It doesn't surprise me that there's interest in the videos. It's just, in these tapes, it's just surprising that it actually has gone big. Because there were a lot of people begging me, and there were some that were hounding me to digitize and provide the whole collection of tapes. Once I did that, it just opened up the floodgates.
Now, how many tapes?
So there's 56 of them. The story, how it goes here, is when I started in October of 1989, I was working that Thanksgiving day, that Thanksgiving after October. So it was November of 89. I was working in the store. That's back when retail was a lot different, when the store was closed on Thanksgiving and Easter. And I was doing stuff around the store, and I figured I wanted to take a look at the sound system. I just wanted to see how the store was hooked up and how we played music. And I took a look at the tape deck that was behind the service desk, and sure enough, it was November. I saw a November tape, but next to it, I saw an October tape. And I'm thinking to myself, this tape is supposed to be in the garbage. I can't imagine why you would keep an old tape, and you wouldn't mail these things back. So I just took it. I figured, it's kind of a memento for my first job. You hear those songs over and over because these tapes are only, 45 minutes per side. I figured, what, someday it might be interesting. So I took that tape, and then I continued taking tapes. So it just was one of those things where I just continued collecting these and really didn't do anything with them until recently, a couple years ago.
So what's the reaction been like from maybe Kmart? I mean, you mentioned you kind of took the tape, and historically, any big corporation, things like that, they seem to be very protective of their stuff. They're very aggressive about copyright enforcement. I mean, obviously, when you're getting into digitizing something like this, I think it has huge social value, certainly, and I think the virality has kind of proved that. But what's the response been like from Kmart itself? I mean, do you have any concerns that they might come around and be like, hey, you shouldn't have done that, or has it been a little bit more positive? Which certainly, as someone who kind of, as you guys both know, studies copyright, I think that would be the lot smarter play. It just doesn't always seem like they go that way. So I'm curious, How's that reaction been like?
So this is a gray area, and one of the reasons why I waited to post the actual cassettes, because I had digitized them some time ago, but just recently released them, is I didn't know where to put them, because I know that there's copyright, whether it be music, instrumental, or the mainstream songs that are on these tapes. There's a lot of them. So, putting them out there, there was a little bit of concern in the background. Should I be releasing these or not? Should I be putting them out there? And I finally gave in and did it. But, there's a couple things here. There's a statute of limitations on theft in terms of taking the tapes. And then also, that was Kmart Corporation. It's now called Sears Holdings. Now, in a legal matter or legal court, it could be the same company, but I would say it has changed hands at this point. And I'm guessing I would feel that Kmart doesn't care. Probably positive publicity for them because they're not doing very well, nor is Sears.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is I've actually been contacted by people I used to work with. One of them was actually the loss control manager of the store I worked at, and he's like, "Nice job. I didn't catch you because, I was your former loss control manager, Jim." And I'm like, "Yeah, I remember that guy." And then actually one of the managers I used to work with found me and gave me a call and said he heard about it. And I think it's probably around the Kmart office, the home office at this point. I'm sure they know about it. And I think I would be hearing something soon if there was a concern. But who knows?
Yeah, it just seems like you said, they're not really doing that well, that it would be very stupid of them to basically anger the internet that seems to have responded very positively to this. That would seem short-sighted, but I've been really surprised at the number of people who, obviously the three of us go way back. For those who don't know, Mark here was at one point my locker partner, and he was also Matt's locker partner.
Yep.
So, obviously the three of us go way back, but I was surprised by how many people in my various social networks have shared it. You mentioned Boing Boing and Vice, but my brother shared it even, and I was telling Matt earlier, he actually is a subscriber to your YouTube channel, and just finding that out to me was kind of funny how far this has gone.
Yeah. There's a couple comments I see out there and a couple themes. And first of all, I've said this to other people I've talked to, that I loved working for Kmart. When I was at the store level, it was awesome. They paid me well. I got promoted quickly. And I worked for them for 10 years all over Chicagoland. And, I got burned out and I left the company and I changed careers because I had enough of retail. But the company itself was actually very good. And so my sentiment about putting these tapes out there and my thoughts on Kmart are not negative. It's actually very positive because, as I've mentioned in some of my other interviews too, is when you listen to this music, I actually remember this stuff because when you're on the sales floor, you actually get used to it. You kind of predict it, and it kind of gets you through the day. And so it's like, wow, it actually brings back warm memories of simpler times. Much simpler, before kids, before college, before a lot of responsibilities. So, I think it's a positive. It's not a negative or slam towards the company of being silly, for what they played back then.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people seem to have had that nostalgia reaction of, when my brother shared it, I remember, this music playing when I used to stand in line for Nintendo games and things like that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, and there's a lot of people right now that are leaving comments on the Internet Archive. I'm getting a comment every 30 minutes probably, because there's 56 different tapes, so they're different weeks of the month, different months, and I'm not seeing a lot of negative comments. In fact, almost everything is, hey, this is really cool. You've preserved a part of Americana, or a piece of Americana. Then there's this whole subgenre of music called Vaporwave, which is kind of emerged in the last couple of years, and that's where, DJs or home enthusiasts take this type of music, they remix it, and I am not sure what to expect because there's people that are telling me that they're going to be remixing and doing stuff with it, and I tell them, I've responded and said, please keep me in the loop because I'm really interested to know, because I don't think there's a commercial remix market for this. I think it's nostalgia, and I think it is a piece of history, and I think it really is deserving to be in the Internet Archive.
You mentioned a couple of the interviews you've done and things like that. I guess what's been your biggest frustration with the way that maybe some of the Internet has taken this? Are they really digging into like how you got a hold of this material and what it means and how people are reacting to it, or are they sort of taking a more surface approach to things and just, oh, look, it's these kitschy songs that, we remember from when we were kids, on to the next thing?
It's the humorous aspect. It's the funny news. It's the strange news. It's the oddball news. The headlines are, this guy worked for Kmart and he kept every every cassette tape for some reason. Or if you, if your eardrums are not tired enough from what you're listening to, check this music out. Give it a listen. A lot of that type of sarcastic fun, and it's poking fun at it, and it's not as serious, I think, as it could be. And I think actually I appreciate our conversation because I'm lighthearted, and I actually think it's fun and it's awesome the way it's going. But there actually is a lot of history around this, and as to why I did it and how it's transpired. And I haven't had a good chance to get that story out. Yeah.
So how would you overall describe the experience of sort of being virally discovered by the internet? How's that sensation been for you? And, your notifications going crazy, and all of a sudden, I mean, like Matt said, you've had this video up for 2 years, and all of a sudden it blows up. What's that experience been like for you?
It is tiring. It's hard to keep up, but I also am not throttling it, and I'm going to get to a point soon. If it continues, I'm going to start turning some of those notifications off, but I'm still kind of on a honeymoon with it. I am not sure what to do with it or where to go with it. I know I want to stay in touch with these people. I know I want to contribute any other audio, which I've actually received a couple reel-to-reels, which are being transferred as we speak, which are going to go on there, which somebody I'd been corresponding with had sent me today. But I don't know where to go with it. So this is new to me. And, people have come up to me and said, yeah, you're an internet celebrity, or you've got your 15 minutes of fame or whatever. And it's a different feeling because I've never really been here before. So I don't know yet, but I can tell you it's exciting and it's fun because I've got all these people reaching out to me that I do know and that I don't know, telling me that I did something really cool.
Obviously, I've known you since freshman year of high school, and you've always been one of those people who keeps things, obviously these, you still have an old DAC catalog and some other various fun things. Are you saving anything now that you think in 20 years is going to be worth checking out?
Well, you raise a really interesting point. I have a lot of collections. What I call a collection, sometimes somebody would just consider something they have. Like, I have video and audio and things I've recorded from over the years, and I keep it as a collection, even though there may be somebody else who just owns that stuff, but they don't consider it a collection. It's not organized, that type of thing. I think anything in my collection that is going to be of value someday, I think it's something that has to bake and sit for 20, 30 years. So I knew back when I took these tapes, I just knew it in the back of my head at that time that nobody else was doing that. Nobody was taking those tapes. No one would have them. And I thought someday it would be interesting. And sure enough, 22, 23 years later, they are. I've collected a lot of newspapers recently. I've just been keeping them. I've been putting them aside. And I'm sure other people do that as well. I'm hoping my kids someday, or maybe 30 years from now, will open up and will look at them. And there's other things I've recorded. There's electronics I'm collecting. So I am actively collecting things. It's kind of hard to say, though, what's going to be interesting or what's not. But I tell you, the stuff that I have in my totes and what's organized, it's going to have to sit for many years for it to become interesting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah, I think that collecting attitude, somewhat, at least, both Matt and I share that a little bit. I mean, it's certainly, we've all talked movie collections before and things like that. We've also all talked family memories and archives and things. And Mark, I know you've done some of the same things I've done as far as digitizing personal stuff. And really, it sounds like this is somewhat an outgrowth of that. How would you, I guess, say you really discovered that kind of collector mentality? And is it something that you want to, for example, cultivate in your kids? Do you see it in sort of the culture that kids are being brought up in now, that they're going to share those kinds of interests?
Well, everything now is so digital, whether it be printed form, whether it be music, sound, video. So I think everything now today is just permanent. So it's going to be a lot easier. But I really would hope that my kids would continue this type of trend and such. And I just don't know. I don't know if people are going to really have these types of collections, or things are going to surface like this, because it seems like now everything that's out there is on the internet. Another parallel example to this is when we had our 20-year reunion. I had a tote full of stuff from our school in Naperville North. I mean, you may have some of it. Everybody has a yearbook and such, but I have like a lot of newspaper clippings. I have a lot of pictures, registration materials, folders, maps of the school, all that stuff I posted on the Facebook page. And it's like, everybody was like, wow, you actually kept that stuff. You have all that memorabilia. You have the first flag from the first football game with the new stadium. I kept that stuff. I'm just not sure moving forward people are going to keep materialistic things as much because I think it's digital. But, yeah, I would hope that my kids continue it, and I hope that they appreciate all the stuff I've kept because you guys have seen I do have a whole basement full of organized stuff or junk, as my wife likes to say.
Organized hoarding?
It's an organized hoarding, but it is, and I really do like keeping stuff and collecting,
All right, so you worked at Kmart for 10 years, all the way from basically a stock boy all the way through a manager?
Yes. Can
you talk a little bit about I know when you started there, Kmart was actually a pretty big, Kmart was a big deal. Walmart really hadn't even entered the area. There was Venture and some smaller players, but we didn't even have Targets or anything back then up until, when you left. I know from talking to you, in the 80s when you started, you used to get paid in cash, but then, the company kind of fell apart.
Oh, I love this topic. Retail was so different, and I really saw a transformation of the Kmart company. When I started in 89, we were paid in cash. The store was open at 9 a.m. and they closed at 9:30 at night. Sunday they were open at 10 and they closed at 6. We were closed on major holidays. It was a much different atmosphere. All the people that worked there had been there since the 70s. It was a cradle to the grave. It was ma and pa. Just like when you listen to the cassettes, it's very simplistic times, and it's the same type of feeling you'd have going through a Zayre or a Woolworths. What I saw is around 1992, and it's actually kind of coincidental, around the time that Kmart remodeled and changed to the new logo with the K, with the word Mart that's written in it, and they got rid of the older style with the toilet bowl A, the A in the Kmart that looks like a toilet seat and tank. When they changed from that logo to the new one, that was right around the time that Target started becoming bigger, but Walmart was the biggest threat. It was a game changer. The whole company, everything changed, the benefits changed, and, today it's a lot different. Retail is much different than it used to be. I could go on for a long time talking about the differences, but, I just saw retail in its heyday. And I saw it also become very difficult. I entered the management program at that point, too, so I saw a lot more. The competition is what did it, and it did change.
So it's Walmart's fault.
Walmart's fault. They changed the landscape because Kmart was much different until then.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's entirely, well, I would say it's not entirely for the good, but then, I hate Walmart, so.
All right, now, are you hearing from people outside of the U.S. too, or is it just mainly more in the U.S. with your videos?
Yeah, I'm actually getting some comments that are in other languages. I've had comments from South America. I've had comments from the UK, a lot of countries all over. I took a look at my YouTube analytics, and the U.S. is the number one consumer, and actually males are 90%, and they're between the ages of 20 and 35, I believe. But I am also getting a percentage, single percent, even into the double percentages in other countries. So there is a widespread, and even some of the comments I've received is, hello from Japan. This is incredible, even though our Kmarts, the Kmarts that we had here at one point are completely different. I don't remember if Japan had them. I think they did have a concept or they have something, but in other countries it's completely different than in the U.S. But yeah, I'm hearing from all over the place.
Now, have you heard from anybody? Now, I know you heard from a guy and you were talking about it earlier, the Reel to Reels, and that was actually somebody who had seen your videos and actually had saved his own, because before the cassettes there were Reel to Reels in each store, and that's where you got that. Have you heard from anybody else who maybe worked at a different store that this has sparked, an interest into reviving some of this maybe stuff from other stores and things?
I'm hearing a lot of that. I do think one of the things that this whole viral episode is sparking is this whole idea or notion of collecting retail store recordings in Americana, because it's just not something you see out there. And I think it actually shocked a lot of people, because people are like, wow, somebody actually saved these tapes, and it was from a very interesting era of time. And nowadays you wouldn't even have those tapes. Everything has been satellite delivered for the most part since the mid-'90s in retail. I've heard people say, I worked for Woolworths, and I wish we had our tapes that we played at Woolworths, or, Zaire, that type of thing. But I have not heard anything from Walmart, but it's sparking interest, so I do think it's going to cause some tapes to come out of the woodwork. I think we're going to see some more. There's going to be some collections, things that people didn't realize were going to amount to something. So I think you're going to start seeing more of this. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has this type of stuff out there.
Yeah. Well, and I got to say, the story it reminded, when we first kind of heard about your collections and things, the story it reminds me of the most is actually and Matt and I talked about it way back, I think when we first started doing Robot Overlords, the guy who, he'd recorded a bunch of like jazz off the radio, and that technically it was illegal to record. And then that radio station burned down, and it turns out he got stuff that literally nobody else had. And those tapes are now in the Library of Congress. The first thing I thought of on hearing that this is going viral is, man, I'm just waiting for you to hear from the Library of Congress.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There's another story. If you've heard, or maybe you have or have not heard this, but all the game shows from the 1980s, as well as like all the Bozo's Circus shows, I mean, all of them were never kept because there was never felt that there would be reuse. Now, there's some pockets of shows. I think every Price is Right has been preserved, and there's a couple, but all the stuff that was played back then is not available. So it's the people who have the VHS copies. Those are the people that actually have preserved that material. Same thing with Siskel and Ebert. I don't know if you know, and I don't think the site is up anymore, but at one point they were asking people if you had Siskel and Ebert reviews from At the Movies, because their earlier 1980s episodes were no longer there. So they depended upon the community to get those, because they're great to watch today if you want to know how a movie is, even though the review took place in 1985. So, so it's, it'll be interesting if I get contacted. I'm waiting for someone to ask if they can buy or have the physical cassettes.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff too on the internet over the years about people who preserve video games, because a lot of these companies that get bought, they go out of business, and then you've got something that was designed for a 386, and so you see a lot of that for video games too, and it's just some of this stuff. It's just amazing that. Well, it's amazing. It's amazing somebody kept 56 cassettes of terrible elevator music, but. Like you said, nobody else did it, so it's kind of, you've got the only collection, available. I guess like I said, I've known you but I've seen this, over the last couple of weeks getting bigger and bigger, and it's come through my news feeds and stuff too, and I just kept thinking, the whole time I was like, well, I'm really happy for Mark, but why in the world do people really want to listen to this? It's absolutely horrendous music, and, It just, to me, it's just amazing because, I worked in retail at the same time you did. I would for a different company, but, you hear that music, and by the end of your 8-hour shift, all you want to do is poke your eardrums out so you don't have to.
Music to murder someone,
yeah,
too?
Oh, it's just, it's always, a lot of times it's the Carpenters, but, it's played on a piano, and,
Oh man, I'm with you. I can appreciate that. Now, one other thing I'll mention is there's a lot of folks too that like the technical aspect. They like understanding the history. That, like for instance, in my collection of 56, we have a progression of a year and a half of an older generation of tapes that were made by one vendor, and that was the same vendor that went back through the 70s. And then there's a newer generation that started around 1992, Tower Records and Communications. Not Tower Records, but Tower Communications, not affiliated to the record store. But that guy who worked there that helped mix them reached out to me, and he said, thank you for putting these up here, because I worked on that project, and my father did some voiceovers, and I was from this small town, and it's the address that's on the cassette. And he's like, wow, he says, I'm downloading these, but we don't even have them. We never kept them.
Wow.
So just very interesting. But there's a technical aspect where people want to know, what is the quality of them? How do they sound? What were the advertisements like? So they listen to them. And then, I have a few other tapes in the collection that are related to Kmart as well. And it's just, people find it interesting just to see how it progressed, because those original tapes are just, it really is, it's pretty slow music.
Yeah. Well, and I know, but in between the really slow elevator music, you get to hear, which aisle the, Kleenex is on sale, or
Well, they say, please refrain from smoking. And it's like, wait a minute. Nowadays you wouldn't say that because you wouldn't be smoking. And then there's talk about photo finishing. We don't really develop film anymore. There's talk about VCRs. It's current things that were popular back then. It's an interesting time capsule. It really does. If you listen to it and you go through it, it will bring you back to that era.
I wonder if you might ever hear of it being used in like a movie or something, that's set in that time frame.
Yeah, I don't know. I've actually had a couple YouTube enthusiasts reach out to me and ask for my permission to use it if I give credit. And I said, sure. I mean, people are going to be taking this, and there's already a torrent. Somebody downloaded all 56, and it's 10 gigs. And it's out there. Someone presumably wants to make sure it's preserved on that avenue. I don't know where it's going to go, but I appreciate when people give me credit. And there are some people that said, we're going to be doing something, and I'll get back to you, including some, probably some bedroom DJs, that type of thing, some kids or people that are putting stuff together that are going to experiment with it. So I don't know. Maybe it's the next best thing. I think the highest and best use is really the time capsule aspect.
Yeah. It seems to me like this is one of the things the internet does well, of take these really obscure niche things and actually, preserve it and make it so that anyone that is interested can actually access it. I really hope that Kmart is smart enough, to not ever decide they need to be the copyright hammer the way that some companies in the past have with fandoms that kind of take things and, move ahead with them maybe without outright blatant permission. So hopefully they're smart. It certainly seems like they are so far.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. It's not over, but I do think there's going to be a gradual decline, and I'm starting to kind of feel that now. And I'm thinking within a week it's going to be old news.
Well, we'll find out.
One last thing. Like you said, you mentioned the 70s reel to reel, and you're actually converting that into digital now. Where will people be able to go and find that?
Well, I'm going to upload that 1970s reel into the Internet Archive, and I will also do the reel from 1988. And it's very interesting to note that Kmart played reel-to-reels in 1988. That's the date on the tape. It's amazing. And I kind of knew that, but this confirms it. It'll be on the Internet Archive, and I'm also going to do a special video talking about the reels, and I'll be posting that on YouTube probably concurrently.
Cool.
And the 70s one has actually an incredible opening jingle I have never heard before, and it's just kind of interesting. It really is. I'm guessing it's mid-70s.
And your YouTube idea, if people want to go check out all the other, because I know you have a lot of other nostalgia stuff and how to repair an Atari 2600 and all kinds of interesting stuff. So what's your YouTube?
It's Davis MV, and the Internet Archive is also Davis MV, Mark Victor. So you search for my username on either of those, and you'll get to my page.
Very cool.
Okay, Mark, thanks for stopping by again. And as always, we love what you do.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, guys. I hope to be on soon to talk about things.
Awesome. Thanks.
That's all for this episode of Robot Overlords. Are you interested in the future and how society is changing? We'd love to have you join our community. Visit our website to learn more and to connect with others that share that interest. You can find us at robotoverlords.fm. That's ROBOTOVERLORDZ as in Zeta, .f as in future, m as in machine. The site includes all of the show's old episodes, along with complete transcripts, links to more information about the topics and guests in each episode, and our mailing list and forums. We'd also love to hear what you think about the show. You can review us on iTunes or email us.
I'm Mike at robotoverlords.com.
And I'm Matt at robotoverlords.com.
We hope to see you again in the future.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks.
Robot Overlords.